Hi everyone, it's Lisa and Luna from Don't Run with Scissors, back with another Technique Tuesday. Today is going to be the final video on playing with gelatos, the Faber-Castell gelatos, which are a water-soluble ink that looks a little bit like a lipstick, and all the fun things you can do with them. The previous two videos I showed you what these were, how to use them, what kind of paper you can use those on with water or dry, blending techniques. Last week we did how to use them on a rubber stamp and the way that you can transfer the image from your stamp to the paper. There's a couple different ways you can do that. And as well as painting or coloring in a stamped image. Today we're going to finish up with a little bit of the mediums and what you can do with them. There's going to be 3 different techniques. We're going to do 2 with stencils and 1 with embossing. So let's get started. So on the very first video we talked about prepping your paper, and if you're not using watercolor paper, some of the other types of things that gelatos work on, some people recommend that you prep your paper. It's just like putting a primer or paint thinner, paint primer on a wall. So I have the Gesso, Faber-Castell Gesso, and it's thin white milky primer essentially. So I used a paintbrush that I actually have stashed over here in water so I can go wash it out. But I literally just did it with one of these. And I covered this entire sheet of paper. You can see that there's a little bit of a warp to it, but it is fully dried. You can heat dry these to speed up the process. But this is a 4x6 sheet of paper completely covered in gesso. And what we're going to do with it is we're going to play with this kind of bamboo stencil. So for bamboo, I'm going to go all green, and when you have this kind of technique, which we're doing is we're going to be making a background and then lifting the color off of it. So over the gesso, you want to put a liberal amount of color. So we're going to go right over it. We're going to cover the whole thing. This requires no blending, but you do want to cover it the whole side. Nice and thick. And we'll go back in with our last color here. Make sure all the white is gone. I'm not gonna make sure all the white's gone. Cover the corners. I can trim the corners off after if you need to. Okay, because it's bamboo, I'm going to go in back with this lighter color real quick. Try to get... So the gesso is going to add a texture, which is probably, or is the reason why I can't get some of these white ridges to lift up. Clean this part off real quick. So now, what you're going to do is you're going to put your stencil right over it, depending on which way you want your forest or your trees to go. I think we'll go this way. I am going to secure this down with some Post-it tape so that it doesn't move around too much. And if you remember in the very first video, there was something that worked really well, excuse me, for lifting and blending the color. Now, because this is on a gessoed piece of paper, the ability for the color to come up is very easy when you use a baby wipe. So we're going to come off here. Here's a baby wipe. As I said in the first video, these sometimes are really have a lot of moisture to them. They're very damp. So I've had this one out for a couple minutes just to let the air make it not so wet and damp. So now you come in and your stencil's down, your tape down. You're going to come in and just scrub right over the stencil. And you can see that it's lifting the color right up. And find another. Careful not to bend your stencil, which I just kind of just did here. We'll bend it back. And depending on how thick or how much rubbing you want to do, you essentially can get right back down to that white color. In the essence of the video, I'm not going to continually beat my paper to get that color off. But you can see the color that came off, and now when you lift it, that dark color that you started with will be right there. And you can trim your edges up and add a Panda Bear. I'm not so sure what this dark stuff is. Ooh. Blend that back in. So there you have it. You can pull the color right up. It's lighter. It's not white. If you keep scrubbing, you may get to the white that you want. But do know that it will leave some type of small residual color. And there you have it. So that's covering it in gesso, covering with a stencil, and pulling the color up. Now what happens if you wanted to use the gelatos with a stencil? Again, these will wipe clean. You could essentially put this stencil back down, or down anywhere, and just color over it with gelatos and then blend it with a baby wipe. You could do that. It's a lot of work, but you could also turn your gelatos into a paint. You can also turn your gelatos into a spray mist. You could shave off some of it and blend it with some water into a spray bottle. I'm not into that, but it's a possibility. So we're going to use the same stencil now, but this time we're going to turn the gelato into a paint. So I have my stencil cleaned up, relatively cleaned up. I'm going to put that down again. Got that one piece that wants to stick up. You can use a gel medium, and a matte medium, a matte gloss, whatever you want to do. And all you're going to do is put some of that on your craft mat, a little spatula. Excuse me. And we're going to go back with the greens. This time I'm only going to use one green just so I can show you exactly how this is going. What you need to do is take an X-Acto knife, palette knife, whatever you have. You're going to cut up a little bit, a little off the top of your gelato, just to get some color going on the mat. You don't need much. And you can put that in and it will break down. And you can see that the gel is picking up the green color. You can go in, you can do this with your finger, you can do it with a popsicle stick. You can make it darker or lighter depending on what you're doing. That's Mama calling. And then you essentially have a paint. And you can use your stencil. You can take your knife. Let's break that little piece down one more time here. Alright. That looks like fun. And now that you made a nice big mess on your mat, you can come in and just layer it right over your stencil. I do half the paper just to keep it going. And there you have it. So when this dries, you have used the gelatos as a paint on your stencil. So up here you can see I smeared it a little. So make sure that your stencil is taped down nice and tight so that you're not lifting up or going underneath it. But that's how you turn your gelatos into a paint to use on your stencils or essentially anywhere. So let's clean up one more time here. My ugly green palette knife now. Alright. Get that wiped off. And the gelatos are just so great because they're just so easy to clean up after. It's water. That's all you need. The stencil, I essentially will throw it under the kitchen sink. And it will come clean with no issue. In the meantime, I'm just going to keep it a little bit damp in my baby wipe and just put that off to the side. So the last thing you can do, or if, of course there's never the last thing, somebody will come up with something fun to do, is play with your embossing powders. Gelatos will resist the powder once you've heat embossed and have everything set. So I have this card that I am going to make. It's a get well card eventually. I have this stamp here. It's got some whimsical birds and air wisps. I stamped this down with Versamark ink and used white embossing powder. I do want to mat this to this blue sheet of paper, so I am going to pick some colors that kind of go along with that. And I do need to get another baby wipe out. I think we'll go with those colors. And like I did in the last video, to make a background, essentially I'm going to do the same thing. This actually has glitter in it. It's a shiny one, so I'm going to hang on to this one towards the end. And I'm just going to come up here and scribble in around the paper. These are so easy to blend and layer, so don't think. This one also has shiny in it. So it's going to have a nice gloss to it. And we'll go back with this other shiny one and hit the outsides. So now I could easily just come in and use my finger and blend them together. And you will see that that's going to pull off the embossing powder in the end. Wait, my finger here again. I'm going to blend these together, and it's going to resist. The embossing powder will not keep the gelato color. Another way you could be blending is by using the baby wipe. It will also break the color down. But because I'm on 110-pound cardstock, it's not watercolor paper, I'm not going to put too much liquid into it until I'm absolutely done with my blending. So I do want to add a little bit more of this aqua. This one doesn't have an official color name on the cap, so I can't help you there. Okay, so now there is some color on the embossed. What you can do is you take your baby wipe and you can gently just kind of swirl right over it, and it will wipe it all off. And any other areas you want to really finely tune, you can put give it a little oomph. And there you have it. You have an embossed image with a background of the gelatos all over it, and blend it in using your finger and or a baby wipe. Either will work, but that will look very nice against my background. And I'm going to put a get well sentiment up here. You can stamp on it. I recommend stays on ink. However, you could stay away from anything that's going to be water soluble, just because the paper is damp. And if you let it dry, it probably would work just fine. And then get this out to somebody who isn't feeling so well. So I will be finishing this card up, but this is how you do a nice gelato background using the embossed images. It goes right over any colors you want. I could emboss these in blue or silver or gold, however, whatever accent piece you want. But it goes right over. Use that baby wipe, it'll clean it right off, and you can make yourself beautiful cards, tags. I will link to some tags that I made last year in October for a convention. Everybody's names were on them for the gift bags that we had. So there's lots to do with gelatos. The fun doesn't end there. And thank you for tuning in. Until next time, when we start our next adventure, I will talk to you soon. Have a great night. Thanks so much.